Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, the outgoing German ambassador says Britain's obsession with World War II has fed Euroscepticism. Peter Ammon says some Brexiteers have a sense of national identity stemming from Britain standing alone against aggression, joined by historian Max Arthur and European political commentator Nina Schick. Joining us live, as you can see. Max and Nina, thank you both for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. We appreciate you taking the time. Ladies first. Nina, what do you think about what the former ambassador had to say?
Well, I can say as a German that is indeed very much the view that is current in German political thinking, especially in the context of Brexit, and not only in Germany, but in many other European countries as well, that Britain has always seemed to have its own identity as a form of exceptionalism, this island nation, and that very much ties into experience of the Second World War. And of course, in the German context, that seems like a EU, because of course leaving the EU was set up from Germany's perspective in order for there never to be a Second World War. So some of the rhetoric that you see in the national media in the UK around the Brexit debate is very alarming to the Germans, because they don't see the UK as, an enemy by any means. But this idea that you're invoking Churchill's spirit, and you have movies like Dunkirk and The Darkest Hour, and you're saying that Britain needs to stand up to the EU bullies, at least in some of the tabloid press, is something that is met with a lot of bemusement here, because they don't quite understand how that link is made, really.
Max, we're little islanders.
We are indeed, and we're very proud little islanders, and I can understand the German viewpoint, but if they read our history, we've had to fight for our position all the way through history. We've had, in 100 years, we've had 10% of it has been war. And so there's a whole generation of people in their 70s, 80s and 90s whose lives were dominated by war. And so you can understand the thinking of a lot of people of trying to hang on to that. But if you speak to the modern generations, I do, to go and talk in schools, the Second World War is so far away from them. It's a completely different world now, and to their mind, a richer world. They don't need to be contaminated from the past. I'm not sure that either side is really putting its cards on the table.
Nina?
Well, I think another interesting that Peter Ammon said in his speech was the idea that after Britain leaves the EU, it will actually be diminished. And he laid out one of the arguments that is often made by Brexiteers, that by leaving the EU, we'll be able to go global and we'll be able to trade freely with the rest of the world. Again, from German eyes, this is seen as a very strange argument to make, because after China, who's the biggest exporter in the world? It's Germany. And it's nothing to do about its EU membership, meaning that it can't go global. It has goods and services which it can sell in the rest of the world. So this idea again comes back to the way that Germans see it. This is British exceptionalism. This is a British kind of almost the narrative, the national narrative being so tied into the war and empire. So again, in the context of the Brexit negotiations, I think that many German politicians and commentators, as you will see in the comment pages in any German newspaper, whenever they write about the Brexit process, will make that link between Britain not having a sense of its own identity after the Second World War and after the loss of empire, and they see Brexit as perhaps a manifestation of that.
Max, we need to get over ourselves, and we need to realise that we need Germany.
I think it's a glorious bit of thinking, and an admirable bit of thinking, but it's very far removed from my life and the life of the people here, to my mind. We're going through a transition. We're leaving what we were never happy with, and it's like a slow divorce, really. But I think we'll possibly enrich the world by our independence. We've always done that. I don't see the Commonwealth as a powerful object now. It was during the war, but no longer. We don't pull on it. We're not using it as much as we could, but I really don't see that leaving the European Union is such a ghastly thing. And I'm surprised that the Germans hold that, because in many ways, after the war, the Germans owed us a great debt. We actually have billions and billions of pounds. And so we somehow decided that, well, let's get Germany back on its path. Let's not. Churchill was very keen that we didn't see the Germans as an enemy after the war, but tried to bring them on. And so he cut the big balance that was owed to us in half. And I thought that was an amazing gesture. And yet now we're being asked for even more money to, leave the European Union. I think history shows us that we will be able to go forward and embrace the other countries in Europe, at the same time widen our own reaches. And okay, Germany is second to China, but possibly may not be for much longer.
Don't get above yourself, is what he's saying, Nina.
No, not at all. I mean, of course, the very interesting thing in this debate is that Britain espouses many of the same views as Germany. I mean, both countries stand for democracy, free and open liberal markets. And I think the distinction is that Germany sees the EU very much as a vehicle in which to achieve that. And of course, the divide is that in the UK, that has not necessarily been the case. But I think it's quite clear, at least from the German perspective, I mean, the EU, with the single market, is the world's largest, biggest free trading area. And under the auspices of the EU, the UK and all the other EU countries enjoy preferential trading agreements with many, many other countries around the world. The question is, by leaving, can the UK replicate that? And of course, you have this idea of like the UK being able to strike free trade deal with the United States. That still does not negate all of the trade it does with the rest of the EU and all the other countries which it is privy to under the auspices of the EU. So this, again, for Germans, this idea that by leaving the EU, you're somehow becoming defenders of the global international liberal world order and exponents of free trade simply doesn't make sense.
Okay.
And there is a lot of camaraderie between the two nations. Nonetheless, on the issue of the EU, they have very different views.
Camaraderie still there, Max?
Oh, it always will be. It always will be between ourselves and the Germans. We had great respect for them during the war. We've had great respect for the way they built themselves, pulled themselves by their bootstrings, and made a really remarkable country. I spent a lot of time in Germany, and they are one of my favourite people. So
there you go. That's a nice way
it's
to
a
end this,
minor
isn't it?
fight. It's a minor fight.
Okay. It's sort of a little scrap rather than a fight. It's good to talk to
Yeah.
both of you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.